So let's talk today about manifesting the higher self and our multidimensionality. As eternal spiritual beings, we are multidimensional. Yes, we have many dimensions of our being, and the spiritual path could almost be summarized as transcending the linear perception of self and integrating the multidimensional perception of self, because we incarnate here as these multidimensional beings, souls, eternal spirits, and go through this forgetting process, right? And we believe we're now only a finite being with one dimension, physical, and that's it. There's nothing else to us. And we're locked in time and space and subject to both, underneath both. So I want to share with you another way I've come to learn is a very helpful way of gauging your spiritual progress. And it has to do with time and the awareness of multidimensionality. So let's look at the higher self first. What is the higher self? If you've been here for a while, then you know the Law of One teaches us that the higher self is our mid to late sixth density version of ourself, or a dimension of ourself. It is your complete sixth density self, which has sort of finished all the requirements of time-space incarnation, right? All the learning that the soul must undergo in time-space, the higher self has completed all of it. So it's also the type of being in that sense that we sometimes refer to as archangels. Archangels in kind of religious mythology are beings that are very, very close to God, close to spirit, but not completely one with it yet, right? Still have one foot in time-space, or duality, we might say. So we're talking about sixth and seventh density beings. These are archangels in religious mythology, because they're really just one small step removed from the absolute consciousness, pure being with no differentiation. So they are still experiencing some sense of individuality, although it's a very loose sense because they are aware of oneness and all of that. So archangels have a kind of individuality still, in that there's still uniqueness to all of them, to their expression. You know, the archangels, the higher selves, sixth, seventh density beings, they all have still unique characteristics, personalities, things that set them apart, but they have the same awareness of self and universe, which is oneness. But we can't say this about God, can we? We can't say that God has unique aspects or unique expressions of personality. No, God is all things at all times, right? So because of this, even archangels, or the higher self within all of us, is still part of duality, however subtly they may be. Now, in the Urantia papers, it's interesting because it describes Jesus the man, the physical body, human, was the incarnation of Archangel Michael. And I hadn't noticed this idea until I came across the Urantia papers, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. That seems very plausible. And I came to find out through my recent studies that even some of the Gnostics, the early Gnostics from the 3rd and 4th centuries, also believed that Jesus was the incarnation of Michael, Archangel Michael. And that Michael had to be very careful and selective in choosing the parents of Jesus, Mary and Joseph, which is why we get these biblical tales of Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, coming to Mary and Joseph separately and announcing to them that the Messiah will be born. You know, there may be some real truth to that, in that through a vision or a dream or something, these archangels may have been communicating, hey, you're about to get a very, very high frequency soul, so take good care of this child, raise them right, give them the best chance at realizing their spiritual destiny, because you're getting a very advanced soul. I can definitely see that being a message that Mary and or Joseph received at some point, because, you know, when you think about what it must be like for an archangel, an extremely advanced being, sixth or seventh density being, to choose an incarnation, a human body, right? This happens all the time, where higher density beings will incarnate into third density here with us to help us out of our struggles, right? And so this is apparently what may have been the case for Jesus. And when you think about it, from the archangel's perspective, what better impact could you make on a planet than to incarnate as a long-awaited, long-prophesied Messiah? Yeah, you can use that archetype or belief in the collective consciousness to do a lot of good if you're an advanced positive being. And so this is one example of our multidimensionality, the fact that we experience ourselves here and now as a human flesh and blood, as a soul in a body, and there's higher density versions of us, completed versions of us, no longer in time space, all happening now, and there's a communication going on at all times. That's one example, right? So this kind of prophecy, if we want to put it that way, that there will be one day a Messiah, a savior character who will liberate us. It's not unique to Judaism, although Judaism is the most probably notable religion that has prophesied messiahs. And there's been many messiahs, right? Elijah, Moses, Abraham, and so forth. But the prophecy quickly becomes a strong collective belief, doesn't it? When enough people believe, yes, the Messiah is coming, the Messiah is coming, we are creating an archetype in the collective consciousness, a belief system in Messiah that must actually be made manifest, because everything humans believe with conviction, as we said a couple of weeks ago, when you think about something with true belief and conviction, such that you even will act upon it and it demonstrates itself in your life, that thing has to manifest. And Jesus even said, whatever you ask in prayer, believe you've already received it and it will be yours 100% of the time. So it's like, imagine how many millions of Jews over the thousands of years of awaiting the Messiah were praying each and every day to God, asking for the Messiah and living their life in such a way that they believed the imminent appearance of the Messiah could happen at any moment. We see this all throughout the New Testament, that there was this expectation of the Messiah. The Essenes had a very strong expectation of the Messiah, or a new teacher of righteousness who would liberate the Jews from their pagan contamination, animal sacrifices, and all of that. So like, humans create these collective beliefs in Messiah characters. And imagine being a 6th, 7th density being looking to incarnate and choosing your time, space, incarnation, being like, hey, there's a big golden opportunity here. If I can incarnate and become that Messiah character everybody was waiting for, I can sort of use this collective belief to do incredible good in the collective consciousness. And so you would see it that higher density beings would find these prophetic characters and messiahs and saviors to be very tempting incarnation opportunities for them to do significant good, because usually a 6th or 7th density being is only coming to Earth for one trip. Like, they're up in their own density doing lots of advanced work, but maybe they need a little balancing. They want to be of service to really struggling planets. And so they choose to spend one incarnation, a quick blip on the map for them, in a 3rd density body, helping a struggling planet like ours. So they see all the positive ways they can use this role to be of service by kind of turning the consensus human belief on its head and becoming an altogether different kind of Messiah, right? Not the militaristic conquering type, which a lot of the Jews expected, but the spiritual type who brings the knowledge of God to humanity. And by delivering the true light, the true knowledge of God, can then help rescue humanity from their darkness and bondage. Because really, everybody has to rescue themselves, right? You can't really rescue anybody. You can just offer them a life raft. You can throw them a rope and hope that they grab onto it. And this is clearly what Jesus was doing by being out in the streets of Palestine and Judea and Galilee, preaching the good news of the kingdom of heaven. He said, I'm like a farmer sowing seeds, right? I just scatter seeds everywhere I go. Some seed falls on good soil, some seed falls on bad soil. Makes no difference to me. I'm just here to sow seeds. That is absolutely the perfect attitude of a higher density being. But this is where the collective agreement comes in, right? The Savior, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, for example, only has the power to save anybody who believes in his life and teachings, the gospel he preaches, right? And does what he says. This is the only way they can be saved. There's no outsourcing in reality. There's no outsourcing in true spirituality. Everything has to be embodied in yourself. You can't claim somebody else's embodiment for yourself, right? Well, I believe that Jesus died for my sins and he was perfect, lived a sinless life and was died and resurrected and born on the third day and ascended to heaven. Now I'm saved because I've verbally confessed in someone else's embodiment. Sorry, not how it works. That's called a spiritual cop-out or a spiritual bypass. Jesus did not come to tell everyone to confess him as Lord and believe he was resurrected. Imagine the absurdity that Jesus would actually care more that you believed he was resurrected than that you followed his teachings. I mean, it's hilarious, right? Imagine going to the pearly gates, in the classic analogy, seeing Jesus in heaven, and he's like, all right, my son, my daughter, tell me why you deserve to enter the kingdom of heaven. And you're like, well, I believed you were resurrected on the third day. I didn't do so well at the following your teachings part. Sorry. But, I believe, brother. Lord, Lord. And Jesus is like, oh, great, you're in. You got the secret passcode. Open the doors, lets you in, slams the door shut. Next person shows up. Hello, my son or daughter. Why do you deserve to come to the kingdom of heaven? Because Jesus, I followed all of your teachings with my whole heart. I loved God with all my heart. I loved my neighbor as myself. I forgave everybody who harmed me, and I always served those who were needy as best I could. Jesus says, great, that's awesome. I'm so glad, but did you get the confession part in there? Oh, well, no, Jesus, I didn't think that was, I never saw you telling me in the Bible to confess you as Lord or believe you were resurrected, so I didn't think I needed to do that. Oh, bad news. Sorry, that actually was the whole purpose of why I came. See how far away we've gotten? Jesus came to deliver the knowledge of God, and anyone who resonated with it was allowed to apprehend it and therefore apprehend the kingdom. He didn't come to bring a spiritual bypassing tool to humanity. He came to help humanity embody the truth of oneness. And he said this over and over and over. And we're going to look at a verse here in Luke chapter 6 in a second that will drill this point home. But to close this last part out, many, many sages, not just Jesus, right? Jesus is the most notable one, the most famous one probably, but Hindus, for example, have the belief that every so often their archangels, higher density beings from their tradition, such as Shiva or Vishnu, will incarnate into a human body every few hundred or thousand years, and to help the planet and whatnot. And I believe that Krishna is said to be the 8th incarnation of Vishnu. So there's like 7 other avatars in the Hindu tradition that they've recorded that they said, oh, that was definitely, an advanced being, Vishnu incarnating into a human body. Ramana Maharshi was said to be the incarnation of Shiva by all of his devotees. Maharaji was said to be the incarnation of Hanuman. And so it doesn't surprise me if Jesus was the incarnation of Archangel Michael. My point is that there are always old souls who are very advanced in the kingdom of God that incarnate to help us. And all we can really do is take full advantage of their teachings while they're here, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about helping to reform Christianity back to the true original teachings of the Master, Yeshua, who came to teach the oneness of God, the unity of all things. We can't afford to distort the teachings of a real ascended master because we receive so few of them, right? We've got to treat them like the most precious thing in the universe, and that means we hold their words and their teachings above all else, and everything else we hold to the standard of their teachings, not the other way around, in the way that Jesus' teachings have been held and measured against Paul's teachings, right? Who wasn't a disciple of Jesus or an apostle. Humanity has shot itself in the foot in doing this. And so when we get a true old soul who incarnates, how does humanity respond will determine how that soul is able to manifest their destiny. So this sort of begs the question, right? What exactly do we mean when we say old soul? And old soul is not a reference to linear time or, quantity of incarnations. Old soul is a reference to the experience of that soul. And we've said before, right, that every soul advances at different speeds, different rates. Some souls are like a rocket ship to the moon, right? They incarnate very few times and they squeeze all the juice out of their incarnations. And so maybe they only need to live 10 human lifetimes and you have to live 100, let's say, before you graduate their density. They're an older soul, even though you have more incarnations than they do. They're older than you are from the spiritual plane. Why is that? Because they've learned more. Yes? So this is what I want to say today about time and our multidimensionality, is that time is just a measurement of learning or growth of the soul. It's not a linear progression of one moment to the next forever. There is no such thing as linear time as we conceive of it. It's an absolute illusion created by the dualistic mind. And so how is it created? Well, it's created when you think and believe that you're just a body. There's nothing about you beyond this physical body, which is silly. But if you believe that, you will seem to experience linear time as an objective fact. And we create other illusions around time, like watches and clocks, which help us map the rotation of the earth and stuff, and we call that time. It's totally arbitrary. Time on another planet would be totally different. There may be 50 hours in a day or something, or 100 hours in a day. It's all subjective, right? So if you knew with 100% certainty that you are one with God, that you are an eternal divine being, then you would have no experience of linear time. It wouldn't be an experience you have here. Because the more that you experience yourself as a finite entity that is locked in time, the less and less you have manifested the higher self. So this is that kind of barometer I mentioned at the opening of our talk today, that this is a really helpful way to gauge your spiritual progress, is how much do you experience yourself as a time-bound linear being, right? A finite self locked in time, subject to time. That's a great way of measuring your spiritual advancement. Because when time is seen as something real and objective, something that you're bound to and stands above you, then you have limited your awareness of your divinity. And so you notice that when we experience things that we label as negative, painful, time appears to move very slow, doesn't it? But when we experience things that we label as positive, good, happy, loving, joyful, time seems to accelerate significantly, doesn't it? Time flies when you're having fun. I wonder why that is. Maybe because time is an illusion that you give meaning to. And so the more negative and separate and fearful and hateful and resisting you perceive reality, the slower it appears to you. It feels real because you're more separate in your mind from eternity. Doesn't that make sense? You think you're separate from source, God, life, eternity, timelessness, oneness. And so the more you believe you really are separate and you feel separate and you act separate, then time slows down because suffering increases. Likewise, when you transcend the experience of time through joy and love and happiness and service to others, time appears to go very quickly because you're what? Piercing through the illusion of time. You're coming closer to reality, which is eternal, so you less and less experience yourself as being bound in time. Somebody just had an epiphany, I hope. Please tell me in the chat if somebody just got that, because that's huge. If you can see the evidence of that the experience, the subjective experience of time being slow versus fast, pain or pleasure, that right there is proof it's an illusion, you guys, right? What is real and what is actual does not change. We know this. We know that what is real does not change, cannot be altered. So why is our experience of time constantly being altered? How about this? The older you get in the body, the faster time appears to go. The younger you are in the body, the slower time goes. Remember how long summer break felt when you were in elementary school? It felt like an entire lifetime. You came back, a measly 3 months later, feeling like you had, you see all your friends from last year and you're like, hey, Johnny, Tommy, Billy, Bobby, whatever. And they're 3 inches taller, they look different. You're like, oh, you've aged so well. And you hug each other. It's like you're doing a family reunion after 10 years. And it's been 3 months. Like 3 months to me today goes by like that. Why? Because more experience. We have more experience accumulated, and so our perception of time speeds up. It's an illusion, you guys. So the more you experience the illusion of time, man, oh man, I got emails by tomorrow and the job interview on Friday. I'm so stressed out. What am I going to do tomorrow? I got to go to the grocery store. And oh, yesterday I messed up. I'm so guilty. You're stuck in time, past, future, past, future, past, future. That is a great way of measuring how awake and aware you are of reality. Because the more aware you are of oneness and your divinity, the less you experience linear time. And you just know, hey, I can't do anything. The divine power does it all. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know it's going to be for my highest good. Whether I learn through a challenge or I learn through a joy and a pleasurable experience, doesn't really matter. Everything happens for my good. I can't worry about the future anymore. I can't worry about the past anymore because I love it and I forgive it. You only experience yourself in the now moment, the more actualized you become. So again, the deeper we're bound in time, the stronger the illusion appears, and vice versa. Eventually, by integrating all the aspects of the higher self into our human avatar, the illusion of time can be penetrated altogether. This is why Jesus called it eternal life, right? Whoever believes in me will have eternal life. What does it mean to believe in me, in Jesus? Well, we know Jesus wasn't speaking as a physical body, a human, because he said, if you want to be my disciple, the very first thing you have to do is deny yourself. In another passage, he said, take up your cross and then follow me, meaning crucify that thing, kill that ego, kill that separate self, and then you can start to be my disciple. So if Jesus made ego death the requirement to be his disciple, I can't imagine Jesus was asking his followers to do something that he himself hadn't done yet. So whenever Jesus speaks me or I, first personal pronouns, he's referring to his realization of his divinity, the Christ, the higher self, the true self inside the form that men are unaware of, yeah? And when they try to worship his form, his body, his personhood, he said, whoa, 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 why do you call me good? Why do you worship me? Nobody's good but God. Because he was directing them to how they were seeing him. You're not seeing my real self. You're mistaking me to be this body, this person. Jesus did this all the time, right? And so this is another way we see Jesus being aware of his multidimensionality. Of myself, I can do nothing. I can only do what I see the Father doing. That's multidimensionality. So, there are many dimensions of your true self which are outside of time and don't experience things like aging or beginning or ending, creation, dissolution. There's many dimensions of yourself that don't experience any of those changefulness, phenomenons of changefulness. And one such dimension is love. Easy example, right? Contrary to what most people believe, that love is just a fleeting, temporary emotion that you only feel on occasion when good things happen. Well, we know better than that here, don't we? We know here that love is a quality of your consciousness. It's a quality of your being that you experience to the degree you've brought it forth, right? You experience love to the degree that you have given it and extended it through yourself. And you absolutely can get to a place where love is a permanent experience. Love can be integrated as a permanent awareness, something you always feel in every moment. The same can be said for peace or happiness, right? These are fundamental aspects, non-physical dimensions of yourself, your higher self, that you are now working on manifesting through the avatar, the human avatar. This is kind of like the game that our higher selves are all playing, or our souls are playing. It's like, how much of my higher self can I manifest in a human incarnation? Let's go find out. And then, you live a whole lifetime, you come back, hey, I had 65% higher self incarnation. That's pretty good. That's 5% better than my previous one. You can almost see it like that a little bit of it's a challenge that the soul is up for. How much of my divinity can I realize in a human lifetime? It's the greatest game being played in the universe. It's the greatest show on turf, right? Your awareness of yourself, your divinity, is the game you're playing. How aware of yourself are you? And of course, your awareness of self is I am. I exist. I know that I exist. This is also a timeless dimension of your being. Yeah, this is the Christ nature within everyone, which Jesus realized in himself. You can also bring this aspect of yourself through during an incarnation. This is what Jesus did. Yeah, his physical form always was the same, didn't change, but he spoke from a different place. He didn't speak from personhood, separation, individuality. He spoke from the Christ nature, from the higher self nature, right? He spoke from the awareness of his perfect oneness with God, and thus demonstrated what level of awareness is available to all of us. This is why Jesus didn't make himself exclusive or special in some way. But he told everybody, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's not within me and you have to confess me and believe in me and then you can get into the kingdom. No, it's in you right now. How can you be locked away from a kingdom that lives inside of you? It's literally your kingdom, right? You can only be aware of it or not. Jesus said, the same power that's been given to me has been given to you. And that you'll do even greater works than me, Jesus said. So one of the ways in which we can see our true power is through our multidimensionality. Through understanding ourselves as multidimensional beings, this is how we begin to pierce the illusion of time, wake up from the dream of separateness, and manifest the higher self through our human avatar. We have to become more and more aware of how multidimensional we really are, because the belief in being a person, an ego consciousness, is the belief that you're a singular dimensional being. You're just physical, that's it. There's no other aspect of you. So you're limited to physicality, to time, space. Pleasure and pain will always be your lot, and all these other beliefs, right? But when you begin to pierce that illusion by being aware of your multidimensionality, it loses impact on your mind, right? To believe you're just a person becomes silly. You're like, how could I be just a person? I don't even know how I'm doing anything. I don't even know how I open and close my freaking hands. I don't know how I breathe oxygen. I don't know how my heart goes on beating while I have no conscious thought for it. There's no way I can be this body. This body is right now performing billions of chemical processes, which I can't even begin to understand. Science today can barely begin to understand. How can I arrogantly claim that I am the body? Clearly, the body is a temporary housing device for the consciousness, the awareness, the aliveness, the life force energy that I am experiencing. I need a body to manifest it. So the body's just an instrument, yeah? And really, the body is a learning device, is what A Course in Miracles teaches us. That through the body, you gain experience, yes? And by gaining experience, and here's the important part, making good use of the experience you accumulate. Because, hey, a lot of souls out there accumulating a lot of experience, lifetime after lifetime, over and over, sex, drugs, rock and roll, separateness, sex, drugs, rock and roll, over and over and over again. So they have way more experience than a higher density soul may, who only needed 10 incarnations, and they're on their 105th incarnation. Shouldn't they be considered an older soul? They have more experience accumulated in a human body than the other person does. Well, the other soul made much better use of learning from those 10 incarnations than the other person did. And so they're an older soul, and the person with 105 human incarnations is a younger soul. Why? Because they're learning slower. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the pace at which every soul learns. But the point I'm making is that time is a measurement of our learning, of our evolution. And that's why we call them old souls. In looking at this aspect of being multidimensional, let's look at a practical example so you can begin to see that this is absolutely the case, that you can experience your multidimensionality right now. One of the ways we can see this is the fact that we are often in two places at once. And we do this so often, in fact, that we don't even realize we're doing it. But as an ego, we carry this notion that you can only be in one place at once, right? I can't be in two locations at once, says the ego mind. And from the physical body level, that's true. The physical body can't be in two places at once. But again, you're not the physical body, you're the consciousness. And consciousness absolutely can be in two places at once, and actually almost always is. Because you're always thinking about something, while part of your consciousness is present in the room that you're in the moment that you're in right now. Part of your consciousness knows who's entering the room, exiting, if danger happens, you'll be aware of that. You're sitting in a place, maybe you're drinking coffee, and you're doing all these things in this physical dimension, talking on the phone, texting, computer, and yet your thoughts are somewhere else. You're thinking about what happened yesterday. Or you're predicting the future. You're wondering about what will happen tomorrow. So this is consciousness experiencing multiple energies at once, the energy of the now moment and the energies of the past. And this is why we have the faculty of memory, is that memory allows us to revisit the energy of the past from the now energy that we are, from who and what we are now as we've learned and evolved and grown into this particular expression we are in this moment, goes back into the past and encounters the energy of the past in a new way and can begin changing its perception of the past, and in doing so, changes the past. Interesting, right? You don't change the physical events that happened, but the physical events don't really have meaning outside of you. It's that in the past, you gave them one specific meaning, victimization, whatever it was, and that became your story, and that became a distortion, a blockage in you, based on the distorted perceptions of that past experience. So now with new wisdom, new awareness, new illumination, you think about that past memory and you bring a new perception to it of non-judgment and forgiveness and God's will being played out. And you say, actually, it was all perfect. And it's healed. It's transmuted from you. The blockage is released. That's called changing the past. And we can change the future in the same way by visualizing the experiences we wish to have with belief and conviction. We force those experiences to come into our near future. So in this way, there isn't past and future. There's just what you perceive right now, and perception is creation, whether past, future, or present. Yeah, the way you perceive is always how you create. So practical example, you're having a conversation with a friend and you say something that you had no intention of being offensive or critical or anything like that. But this person's living from a victim identity, and they take your comment personally and they get offended and they kind of scold you for it and chastise you for it. Easy for you to say, you don't know what it's like to go through this, and I wish you'd have some sensitivity to my past because you don't understand how I've been hurt. And they storm off. And you're left there shocked and confused and kind of angry and feeling self-righteous and defensive. And so you kind of just move on and go about your day. Oh, that was weird. I wonder what got into them. And then the next day, you're going to, let's say you live in the Bay Area like I used to, and you got to take public transit everywhere you go. So you're waiting in line or at the bench at the subway station. And you're sitting there waiting, for your subway to come. And you start thinking about what happened yesterday with your friend. And you're thinking about it and you remember what they said and how they reacted so defensively. And you remember a part of their past, abuse or something from childhood that you kind of temporarily forgot when you made that comment, and you realize, maybe I should have worded that more carefully. And it's not that you hurt them, of course. You can't hurt anybody and nobody can hurt you, but you can remind them of their own hurt, and you can kind of encourage them to face up to their own inner pain. And if they don't want to face it, it'll be painful for them. So you can encourage people to experience their own pain in a new way, but you can't give them something they didn't have before you came along unless they agree to it, right? Free will, number one. So you didn't hurt them, but nevertheless, you realize I could have been more mindful. And you realize, if I was abused like that, I'd probably get defensive and it would hurt if someone said that to me. I didn't mean it to be hurtful, but that's just what happened. And so you have this new perception given to that moment. You say, they're just where they are. They're just doing the best they can. And They must be in a lot of pain to get angry at a close friend like that. So, I forgive them. I understand why they were hurting. And then you feel this weight is lifted and you feel love for your friend return to your heart. And then the subway comes and you get on the subway and go about your day. Okay, you just experienced bilocation, multidimensionality. You changed the past and continued on in the present all at the same time. Your body was physically present at the subway station, maybe saying hi to people next to you and like being aware of the trains passing, but you were somewhere else in your mind at the same time, thinking about the past and re-experiencing the energy of it. This is your divinity, you guys. This is why you are consciousness, not a body. You can and do always experience this, but usually we do it to the opposite, don't we? We experience multidimensionality in a negative way by ruminating over the past. And I can't believe he said that to me. What a jerk. I'm going to tell him what's what next time I see him. And you're brooding over your grievances. Well, you're just turning up the distortions in your past, right? You are changing the past by going back in your mind and making it worse than it actually was. The more time goes forward for certain people that have been hurt, the more angry they get. The bigger the deal is. And it's like, when that thing happened, it really wasn't that big a deal, but you made it into this big victim story and carried it for the rest of your life. It's like some people are literally stuck in the past right now. How can you say that's not multidimensionality? How many of you have a family member or a friend or somebody in your life who they're literally still so stuck in the past, they don't even realize how they're always bringing it up and reenacting it and recreating it and referring to it and judging everything based upon it. And you're like, man, you got to get over that and heal and get to the present moment. Like you're wasting your whole life living in the past. So how we interact with the illusions of past and future will determine everything about our now moment experience, won't it? Because it is all happening now. That altercation with your friend that happened yesterday is happening now. You can revisit it. You can alter it. You can heal it. And so each time a blockage is released from the past, more of the higher self is made manifest. Every time you heal, right? Healing is literally the gradual process of higher self incarnation. That is what healing is, you guys. And so this begs the final question, and we'll close with this. How do we use time then in the best possible way as this instrument of learning? What's the best way to make use of a human incarnation so that we learn the most we possibly can, so that we manifest as much of the higher self as we possibly can? And I'm going to tell you guys, it's two things, both of which were the pinnacle pillars of Jesus' gospel. It's forgiveness and service to others. These are the two most polarizing means available to the human in a human lifetime, meaning nothing will polarize your consciousness faster towards the positive polarity than practicing forgiveness, non-judgment, and service to others. And so why is that? Well, let's look at what Jesus said about it. This is Luke chapter 6, 37 and 38, one of my favorite passages from Jesus. Jesus said, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged." What? Wait a second. Jesus is contradicting Christian theology. Jesus the heretic is... Jesus says, don't judge and you won't be judged. Wait a minute. I thought everybody was going to face the judgment of God at the final day, and only those who confess Jesus don't go to hell. Jesus says, no, just don't judge. Don't condemn, you won't be condemned. What? Surely this can't be true, Jesus. Oh, yes. Jesus goes on to say, pardon, and you will be pardoned. Give, and it will be given to you. They will pour into your lap a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. So here we have Jesus, almost verbatim, quoting ACIM, saying, give and it will be given to you. Giving is increasing, is what the Course teaches us. It doesn't quite put it like that, but that's my summary of it, is that what you give is given back. It's the law of giving and receiving. Yes? So if Jesus clearly taught the law of giving and receiving, or sowing and reaping, then this must be one way Jesus would have us spend our human incarnation, right? To be of the best possible service is to be of the best possible learning and growth in a human lifetime. Why? Well, because if we work in the spirit of love, and we know that God is love, if we do the works of love, which is to serve others, then we must have God present in our consciousness. Yeah? This is why I say you're not saved by your works as if you earn salvation doing enough good deeds. It's not a legal transaction. Good works is the only way to know for sure that you are saved, is that you will manifest and demonstrate the faith you have, the belief you have, the love you have. It will always outpicture itself because faith, love, these things are verbs, not nouns. And so this is why we know service to others is the fastest way to polarize spiritually because of the law of giving and receiving, which Jesus so often taught. It means giving is increasing, and whatever you give, you increase within yourself, right? The non-physical quality that you give to somebody else, love, kindness, patience, forgiveness, compassion, joy, happiness, service, when you give these non-physical qualities away, you activate them within yourself to higher degrees, and you polarize, you learn, you evolve. You become an older soul because you've learned more about the nature of oneness. And likewise for forgiveness, yeah? Jesus said, if you don't forgive others, you can't be forgiven. What you judge in someone else is what you get judged by. This is a self-empowered gospel, right? There's no outsourcing in Jesus' gospel. Jesus puts 100% responsibility for your own salvation upon you. Hey, you want to be saved from suffering? You want to be saved from your sinful habits? Forgive others, Jesus said. Hey, you want to be free from the pain of the past? Stop judging people. Oh, interesting. Not so much a message we hear in traditional Christianity, but undoubtedly the message of Jesus in multiple passages. And Jesus literally says, it's not that God, folds his arms and says, well, if you don't forgive my other child, I won't forgive you. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus says, hey, if you don't forgive, your heavenly Father can't forgive you. God always wants to forgive you, but because God is in you as well, when you use the God energy to judge, condemn, separate, divide, you're using God's power in a negative way, which means you can't receive it in a positive way. You can't use or give the God energy in a negative way and receive it in a positive way. If you use it in a negative way, if you give it to another person in a negative way, you will receive it in a negative way. You will be judged, in other words. This is not clear metaphysics, clear spirituality 101. And so we have all the power to manifest the higher self present within us right now. By changing the past by bringing the new enlightened perception to it, we heal the distortions we accumulated in the past, and we unblock the flow of energy to move higher and higher into our upper chakras, where more aspects of the higher self can be manifested through us. There's no higher way than these two ways: forgiveness and service to others. This is the hack. This is the cheat code, if there is one, to third density graduation. Strive to forgive everybody, which again doesn't mean excusing bad behavior and blah, blah, blah. No, it means seeing the divinity in someone and not mistaking them to be their outward behavior. Forgiveness just means you forgot who you are. You're behaving insanely. You're behaving in an evil way because you don't know who you are. Forgiveness says, but I know who you are. And I'll see you as that and judge you as that. I'll judge you as only the Christ, which is perfect and holy. And by seeing you as the Christ, I help you awaken to the Christ. There's a metaphysical correlate from my mind to your mind when I forgive you. We're helping heal people by forgiving them. We're not excusing bad behavior or evil deeds or any of that. We're saying, I won't commit an evil deed in my heart by hating you for what you've done, by judging you for what you've done. As I offer freedom, I am made free. I polarize. And then whatever I give, based on the law of giving and receiving, the law of sowing and reaping, whatever I give must and always has to come back to me. Jesus said, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. What does that mean? That's an ancient world way of saying exponentially, meaning it always comes back to you. Whatever you give out always comes back to you with accumulated energy, doesn't it? So if we want spiritual progress, let's give it away to others. Let's bless other people, yeah? And we know based on the laws of the universe, which are infinitely benevolent and work always on our behalf, that we can use the laws of God, the laws of the universe, to our greatest advantage by staying in alignment with them. The law of one, the law of love, which says, do no harm, but love thy neighbor as thyself. There's a reason that the most advanced spiritual teacher who ever lived, in my opinion, Jesus, taught this so much. It's because it is the highest way that we've been given.